Okay, we should be set, and he is in the waiting room. Entering now.
Okay, everyone, welcome to our regular City Council meeting here tonight. Today is October 27th, 2020. It is 7:06 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. I would like to read my written determination pursuant to House Bill 5002 and the Utah Code. Whereas pursuant to Moab Municipal Code, I am the presiding officer, the chair, at all meetings of the Moab City Council, whereas Utah Code annotated 52.4.101, the Open and Public Meetings Act, governs the conduct of meetings of the Moab City Council, whereas the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act amendments provide that a public body may convene and conduct an electronic meeting without an anchor location if the chair of the public body, A, makes a written determination that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location, and B, states in the written determination described in subsection 4A the facts upon which the determination is based. Whereas in the previous written determinations I made on August 25th and September 29th, 2020, I stated the facts regarding COVID-19 and transmission, and I incorporate those prior written determinations here, whereas the facts contained in the prior written determinations remain true, including the facts that the state of Utah remains under a state of public health emergency, Grand County is now in a high level of transmission, and the city of Moab City Council meetings do require attendance by individuals at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19. And the CDC indicates that the lowest risk for events and gatherings is virtual only, whereas the health and safety of council members, city officials, and employees, staff, and members of the public is best served by holding electronic meetings of the council, whereas the council has prepared for and demonstrated the ability to effectively conduct its public meetings electronically, including providing members of the public means to observe the council's meetings and provide comments electronically. Now, therefore, I conclude that conducting Moab City Council meetings with an anchor location that is physically accessible for members of the public to attend in person presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination will expire 30 days after the day upon which I made the determination. It is possible that circumstances could warrant future determinations, and so I may reissue future written determinations at that time. Thank you all for your patience in allowing me to read through that, and so we can continue to do our great work and zoom right in. First item on our agenda for tonight is a call to order and roll call attendance. Summer, will you please go through the roll call attendance for us tonight?
Yep, I have Mayor Emily Niehaus, Carly Castle, Assistant City Manager, Joel Linares, City Manager, Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council, Karen Guzman-Newton, Moab City Council, Clint York, Finance Director, Lori Simonson, City Attorney, Mike Duncan, Moab City Council, Ronnie Durestri, Moab City Council, and Tawny Knudsen-Boyd, Moab City Council.
Thank you, Summer. We're now at section 5, citizens to be heard. Unless I'm forgetting anything else.
Nope. We have Brett joining us with his iPhone. I thought maybe he was someone for citizens to be heard, but we do not have anyone in the waiting room for citizens to be heard.
Oh, well, that's good news that Brett is with us because he is reporting here shortly. But thank you for letting us know that we do not have anyone in the waiting room as citizens to be heard, nor do we have anyone calling in. Is that correct, Summer?
I don't have anyone calling in, and at this point, we received 6 comment forms for citizens to be heard, and those will be posted on the City Council page on the city's website.
Thank you. And more specifically, you go to moabcity.org, you click the council button. Oh gosh, I haven't done it in the last week. So councils, and then meet the council. And then
and on the right-hand side,
you'll see tonight's date, October 27th, and that'll be the link to see the comments from citizens. Okay, great. One last check. Anybody there? All right, we'll move on. to section 6 and into our administrative reports. 6.1 COVID-19 updates from Joel.
So I'm going to just do my COVID report as a part of my admin report. I'll start with that and then just move into that. We also have Clint and the chief and Lori going to give a report. So I'll try and be brief to try and move us along. So I'm going to look up here at my other monitor a little bit. So I'm looking into space a little bit. So as you guys are aware, we last week closed City Hall to the public. We're still working. Our numbers are posted, and so people can still set phone appointments and still conduct business with the city. But because of the high infection rate we've had over the last little while, we felt that for the safety of staff and for the community, we needed to close City Hall and facilities to the public. Currently, the state of Utah is at a high risk rate, and it is not looking good for us. The ICUs at local hospitals are reaching capacity. As of Saturday, the University Hospital in Salt Lake ICU capacity was at 99%. HCA was at a moderate stress level instead of the high stress level that the university was under. It was at 66% with 25 beds available. Intermountain Healthcare was at 91% capacity with 30 beds available. And Steward Healthcare Systems was at 85% capacity with 10 beds available. So they're filling up, and that's a problem as we go forward into this, and everyone needs to do their part and wear their mask and social distance and follow the governor's order and follow the county order. The county does have a mask mandate in place. Enforcement has stepped up over that order over the last week, and people have actually been cited for not complying with that order. So please, everyone, wear your masks. Please do your part. Please, if not for you, do it for others, and comply with the order of the governor and the county, and social distance to the best of your ability. That said, we currently in the city or in the valley of Spanish Valley, we have 25 active cases. We've had 106 total cases so far. Our current positive test rate is 11%, almost 12%. And you want that around 5%. 5% of all people taking tests, or you'd want that to be 5% of those taking tests are positive. And currently we're close to 12%. So kind of in an outbreak right now locally. The numbers come down a little bit, but we needed to come down a lot. So everyone, please wear your mask and keep social distancing to the best of your ability. On Tuesday last week, we had a joint meeting with the county where we passed some new OHV restrictions. We've been taking action on those. We've ordered 129 small signs at $26.10 a piece, and we were ordering 4 of the larger signs for the main roads coming into town and that people access at $125 a piece. And so the total for the signage was around $3,800, almost $3,900. And so that was actually a lot cheaper than we thought it was going to be. We were thinking we were going to spend somewhere between $40 and $50 per sign. So Levi and Chuck did a really good job getting us a good deal on those signs. Chuck designed them, they're to code, they meet the state standard. He's also provided that information to the county, and they're going to use the same design, so they'll be the same throughout the valley, whether they're in city limits or not. So to try and help with people understanding what the speed limits are throughout. Obviously the speed limits may be different, but the signage will be the same. It's going to take us about 4 to 6 weeks to get those signs after the order, which we've placed. And we have to order some new poles in order to hang some of the signs. There's a requirement that the lowest sign on any pole be at least 7 feet for safety reasons, so people don't hit it. And the majority of our signs will accommodate the new sign, but some of them won't. So we are ordering some new poles as well, and we'll have to replace the entire pole as long as the sign, so as well as the signs. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I'm going to turn the time over to Clint and let him do a budget presentation. And from there, we'll go to the chief and then to Lori.
Thanks, Joel. I'm going to share my screen really quick here. I seem to screw this up every time, so let's see if it stays on. Did it swap and do the wrong?
We're looking at your current. Yep, well, you've got it. Good job.
All right, that's the first time. So there you go. I'm going to do a quick presentation. I know there's a few people behind me. We got a lot of stuff to discuss tonight. I want to do a quick update of sales tax. We did end up getting our final numbers for October, and they were higher than what I presented last time. So our October sales tax number came in at 115% of what it was last year. So last meeting, I projected it to be at 109 like it was for September, but it came in higher. So it's, I mean, I guess we'll see where it goes from here, but you can see in the graph on the right in the yellow there, that's where we are trending at the moment. So it's good news for in the sales tax world, at least. Next slide. This is just kind of a data collection here that has been put together where you can see where our 4 biggest sales tax indicators are, and from basically 2010 and 11 till now. The numbers for this year are obviously year to date, and we'll see where they end up from there. So what I've put together here is I've put together numbers like in budget / update comparable to last year for 4 of our funds: our general fund, our rec fund, our water fund, and also our sewer fund. And I'm going to present those really quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a package together by tomorrow, and I'll send out the rest of the funds as well. Some of them there hasn't been enough movement this year to really take a lot of time to go over them, but I'll send all of that package out so everybody can see it. Looking at this, the graph on the top left, that's Q1, so July, August, September of this year, and that's comparable to 2017, 18, and 19. You can see that our general fund revenue is down due to the sales tax in July. July came up quite a bit short. August came in, I think, if we go back, was 83%, and then 109% for September. So we're there, but we're not quite there. Our expenses came in great. If you look at the box below there, you can see that our expenses for Q1 came in at 80% of what they were of last year, and that our revenue is 77% of last year. And those two together, our Q1 for our general fund, our net income was about $584,000. That's not including any transfers or anything to other funds. It's usually done at the end of the year. That are budgeted for. So it's pretty good. It's not, if we would have had our revenue where it was last year, I mean, that number from that 584 would have been up over 1.4 million or so. So it's good, but it's not as good as it has been in the last 2 years. But at least our spending has been in place. On the far right, you'll see the general fund last 3 years. You can see I put a revenue number, the expense number, and then the transfers out, which basically is monies that are transferred to the other funds, mainly the rec fund, to replace its downfall. And 2019, that's not final. We should have a final here in the next 2 weeks with our audit group. But our projection is about a $1.5 million shortfall in the general fund. There's a transfer out of about 1.2 million of that, and $1 million of that will be going to our rec fund. Any questions? Next slide. This is just a general fund update of where we are right now for Q1. Everything is in the green when it comes to expenses, except for a little bit over on sanitation, but we're pretty much still in line. Now, this is comparing to budget, not comparing to 2019. So comparing to our budget, which remember we never ended up changing our budget from pre-COVID. So expenses comparable to budget were $907,000 under budget, and the revenue box on the right there, we have come up about $322,000 short of budget there. Mostly I mean, you can look at both of that contributions and transfers line item at the bottom there for revenue. That is, that's our overhead that comes back. It's an accounting calculation that is figured at the end of the year that we budget for. That comes back from the water and sewer fund. So if you take that out, we're almost in line with revenue comparable to budget. So that, like I said before, a Q1 net positive of about $584,000 on just the general fund.
And Clint, so that's June, July, and August, or is that July, August, and September?
It's July, August, September.
Okay.
So if we go from there, yeah, this is the rough one. This is a rec fund. There are some good things that have come out of it. You can see our expenses there, and 17, 18, and 19, all of our expenses and this is not far left, is just Q1 again. For the last 3 years, our expenses were all over $400,000. This year, our expense came in at about 252, but our revenue was down. But it's still, we had a better net income number than we have in years past. So we were bleeding, but we were not bleeding nearly where we had been in the previous 3 years and beyond. You can see that yellow line, that is the net income, how it, at least it's trending up. And the one on the far right, the net income, it's kind of a worthless number to look at because you can see the transfer in numbers on the 2017, 18, and 19 box in the far right. That is the amount has been transferred from the general fund every year to supplement the rec fund. The $950,000 you see for 2019, that is our estimated amount. That is not again final, but it's pretty close. With putting all this together, if it looks like if we can keep our spending down and bring up our revenue a little bit rolling in through the winter and spring, if the Prop 8 ends up passing, it looks like that could cover maybe close to all of the rec fund if we keep our spending in line. So that's pretty good news, and I guess we'll see where that happens here. Is that next week is when we'll get our answers on that.
Hey, Clint, sorry, I'm just curious. So typically in the past, it seemed like showers were a big revenue generator for us, and so we did not offer any showers this year. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I mean, you can answer that one.
We have been offering showers at the MRAC since we reopened it.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yes. If we have, the amount of money that we've got this year has been, it just, the shower numbers haven't come back to where they were in previous years.
So then revenue that was coming in for the rec center, I mean, was it visitors that were just using the pool for the day is basically the bulk of that?
So there's visitors using the pool during the day. Some of this is from the mark, and then general other items. If I jump to the next page, you can see where the income's coming from.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, you're good. So $37,000 of Q1 came from the MRAC, and $20,000 from the mark, and the charges for services, most of that was from City Rec or from the sports.
Oh, wow, okay.
But you can see what we budgeted on there, and yeah, there's a shortfall. At that 374, there is that contributions piece that you can maybe want to. That's one thing I struggle with, is there's always that piece that's budgeted, but it's hard to look at in a Q1 to Q1 comparison. But yeah, Mark was, I mean, they're 71% of budget, but the MRAC, yeah, it was. A lot of that was, there's already some of those passes that were bought previously, so people that already had passes were already swimming. So because I think a lot of those passes get bought in January.
Forgive me. So our rec, the actual that came in was only $64,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Our numbers for June were pretty good when we opened it back up, because people initially came back, bought some passes, and came back in. But for July, August, and September, I mean, that's the number that was spit out.
Once the kids went back to school, obviously they quit coming in, and the random people coming in to swim kind of fell off. The theme that keeps coming up though that I want to point out across the board is, if you look at the Q1 on the left there, and this has been in all of them, you see the actual spending versus the budget. And when Clint put up the percentage slide that showed all the departments, Clint, can you go back to that real quick? One more slide. Yeah, nope, that one. So on the left in the Q1, since we've been operating in the new year under COVID, the actual amount spent versus what we budgeted, you look at that at the bottom, and we've only spent 71% of what was projected we would spend at the time we passed the budget going into COVID. And so we've done an excellent job of really, we've cut our costs everywhere we could. And I feel pretty confident about the situation we're in with what we've done in order to clean our own house and provide for our own savings account in the middle of a crisis. And so the numbers are still bad. They're not good. We're still not where we wanted to be when we started the year before COVID, but we're doing a really good job as staff to make sure that we're only spending what we absolutely have to in order to maintain our levels of service and provide essential services, and maintaining that the money we keep gets saved and put towards the loss that we're sustaining.
And Karen, you hit it on the head with the showers piece. I mean, that's one of our bigger revenue generators at the MRAC, and it just hasn't been there. With the hours being where they're at, I just don't think it really coincides when people were coming in to use the showers.
Gotcha.
Well, and I think that a lot of our our demographic that uses the showers wasn't here this year either. I think that the demographic of who's been in town is completely different this year than it has been in years past. And also, when we closed in March, we had a lot of people who would have taken advantage of that service who were working in the service industry, who left town because we were closed for 3 months, and a lot of that never came back. And so I just think not only were we closed and not only are our hours different, but I think the demographic who's visiting town getting us to 115% is not the same demographic who historically has visited town.
Sure.
And what I'll do in that package I'm sending out, Karen, it has all the line items, so you'll be able to see exactly what's up and what's down. It's just there's too many numbers to put on all of this. So
no, I got it. And then so Joel, just quick, the $145,000 saved, like in the police department, is that because they're also down officers? Is that a part of that equation?
Absolutely, that a part of that savings is our reduction in force that we did in
Gotcha. Okay.
The last two funds, the water fund, you will see net income really bounced up Q1 of this year compared to the previous 3 years. We did have the water rate increase. That is a part of that that $620,000 of revenue you see in Q1. And that was only, the water rate increase was only on August and September. It was not part of July's number. We didn't get it in time. So that's only 2 out of the 3 months. So that number actually probably would have been closer to 710,000 is my projection. So that's good news. If you end up looking over to the far right there, you can see the revenue and an expense item. And those numbers are kind of flipped from what you see on the Q1s. Q1 looks great. Well, that's when we sell a lot of our water. So you're making your revenue up, and then those down months in the winter when we're not selling as much, those numbers kind of come back in line. So but $414,000 in net income is, that's quite a bit more than what we've had in years past. So I would not project us to have a negative net income like we did last year on the water. And on the sewer fund, yeah, our numbers on our revenue are up with that as well, and our expenses are somewhat in line where they have been the past 3 years, with our net income coming in almost $300,000, and it's projecting to go up as well. And both of those numbers came in, the revenue came in over budget and the expenses came in under budget, both ways, you know, $75,000 to $100,000. So, I mean, kudos to that group to keeping their spending down, and their revenues has come in to support it. So the sewer fund is pretty healthy at this point. And lastly, I wanted to give you guys a CARES Up funding update. We've received our first and second tranche earlier in the year when we had initially been approved for $470,000 of CARE funding. Well, Joel, Carly, and the mayor and a larger group went to bat for us, and our third tranche has come back, and we got update late last week that our third tranche will be $854,000, which is roughly $700,000 more than what it was going to be before. So
We should all like clap right now, like woohoo! Yay!
well, that's great. Now we just got to figure out how to spend it. So
Yeah, that's a good problem.
So okay, hey, congratulations, you guys. That's amazing. So the third tranche, it was not based on population. Did they change the formula?
Initially,
I'm happy to speak to this since I worked really hard as a board member of the league to really push for a different formula for this third tranche. So the first and second tranche were population based, and I use the example of, all right, you know, it's never good to drive looking at the rearview mirror, but we can certainly say that population based approach to, you know, dispersing CARES Act fund really shorted resort communities, and in particular Moab. And so I think it's really worth it to say other leaders of cities and towns and counties recognized that it was not an equal distribution and actually advocated for us to receive additional CARES Act money. And basically the way that it was redistributed was that everybody got the same less an amount that would provide communities, resort communities in particular, there were 10 of us, an additional 11%. So on top of what we were already going to receive, the 157, we received an additional amount, and that was, I think it like everybody lost like 1%. And so it's kind of a big deal that other cities and towns were willing to say, all right, you know, for this third tranche, we'll give it to the poor kids. And so I'm just so grateful that that we did receive that additional funding, and we do intend to spend it.
So I'm just curious, can it be used on public safety because of the increase of visitors? Can it be used towards EMS? I mean, what is Grand County also, did they receive funding as well? No.
So I don't know, Clint, you want to speak to that?
They received funding, but they didn't receive additional funding on top of what they initially were approved for. So after our funding was increased, Moab and Grand County's funding actually came out almost identical to each other at the end of the day here for the CARES Act.
And then, sorry, Emily, I didn't mean to stop you. What can it be used for?
COVID mitigation, but public safety is definitely high priority. Also improving the workable space in City Hall. We're also able to put together funding for grants for local businesses. And so we've got a meeting on Thursday to listen and, you know, really understand what the allowable spending is, and then we'll put together a plan for spending it. It's very exciting, and I'm very grateful.
One more
And
thing
thank
I
you,
wanted to
Clint.
add, Clint took him down already, but it's okay. Under the rec fund slide that he had put up, you saw how we had cut spending and cut our expenses quite a bit. We've got the rec pretty close that if Prop 8 passes, I don't want to tell you we can get it in the black, but we are dang close to getting recreation in the black if we get the Prop 8 funding.
Including the MRAC.
We're close.
Close.
Great
But-
job, staff.
Yeah, Joel, I mean, was it not though? I mean, did we not limit the hours that the aquatic center was open because of COVID though? I mean, like, it seems like there's going to be more need next year, we hope.
It was a whole bunch of things, Karen. It was one of them was COVID. One of them was the inability to get staffing at the time we were trying to reopen. And another was financial, just how much were we offsetting the bleeding, reopening it? Because as we presented to you guys a couple weeks ago, we were losing about $30,000 to $35,000 a month still by operating it at the level we are operating it. So, there was a lot that went into how we reopened it with the most responsible way, considering all of those factors.
Clint, thank you so much for that report. We got a long meeting, so we should probably move right along. Who's up next, Joel?
The chief.
Welcome, Brett. You're still muted. Are you waiting for Summer to unmute, or are you unmutable?
There we go. I think I am unmuted. Last week, we said goodbye to Sergeant Jason Boots. He took a position with Sandy Police Department. And Jason was here for about 2.5 years. He was our administrative sergeant. He did an absolutely phenomenal job. And so the vacancy that he's leaving is a substantial one. As the administrative sergeant, he had multiple assignments and roles. And so in his absence, those roles are being dispersed to all the other remaining supervisors. And we're going to temporarily suspend the administrative sergeant position and move that FTE over to patrol where it's badly needed right now. So we wish Jason all the best and Sandy. I'm confident that I can say they have no idea what a stellar employee they're getting. I hated to see him go, but we wish him the very best. For the last roughly 3 years, we've participated with the Grand County School District through our school resource officer program. And I met with Taryn Kay, the Grand County School District Superintendent, last Thursday to let her know that we are suspending that program on November 20th, which will be the last day of the first trimester. So after November 20th, there will no longer be an SRO in the schools. We will still maintain responsibility for any criminal activity there, which will be handled by our patrol officers. The reason we're doing that is our investigations department is right now operating really with one full-time detective and the sergeant, and we really need 2 full-time detectives. So Ryan Burriston, who has done an exceptional job as the SRO, will be transitioning into a full-time detective role in the near future. We're hopeful that we can work out something with the school district to share the expenses of the SRO role so that we can rehire that position. I don't know if or when that will happen, but we're trying to move in that direction. We've heard from a few citizens that there is some concern about e-bikes using the bike paths through town. And so Lori and I have been researching that topic trying to determine whether or not they are allowed on the paths. So we don't have a whole lot more to share on that. We're still working on it, but I wanted to make you all aware that we are aware of the issue and we are working on it. And the last thing that I wanted to give you an update on is the use of force policy review group that was part of the proclamation back in June. Just Friday, I think it was, we finalized the group, and we have 6 members in the group, not including myself, with representatives from Seahaven, Four Corners Behavioral Health, the Moab Valley Multicultural Center, the Department of Workforce Services, Full Circle Intertribal Center, and Moab Pride. So my goal was to assemble a diverse group that would represent our population. And I'm really proud of the group that we've assembled. I think it does a good job of just that. These are, for the most part, these are folks that the police department has worked with in the past and that we have a really good working relationship with. So I'm confident that this will be a productive group, and I'm looking forward to working with all of them on this project. I'm still working on finalizing our use of force policy, and I hope to have that, or I will have that done within the next couple of weeks. The next step after that will be to forward a copy of that policy to the group for review. I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that we're all super busy. So what I've told them is that we will make sure that any kind of deadlines are 2 to 3 weeks out, so that people have plenty of time to accomplish whatever task is necessary. So it's not going to be this won't be a quick short-term project. I don't think anybody anticipated that it would be, but we're digging in and we're getting started, and I'm super excited to be able to work with this group on that. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Brett, thank you so much. You are carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders right now. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of, all the citizens of Moab. It's been really busy. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And so does everyone, all of our officers and all of our civilian staff.
So, and I want to echo that as well, Mayor. They were doing counts out by Arches coming into town this year. They do them every October, and the vehicle traffic coming into town, depending on the weekend, was 125 to 150% of what it was the same weekend the year before. So it wasn't just that there was construction and stuff was getting backed up. It was literally 50% more people in town as far as traffic went as the year prior. So it's been crazy busy. Karen, did you have a question?
No, I just really wanted to applaud the chief for trying to get that group together. I mean, Chief, we're very lucky to have you. Thank you for being open to working with them, and yes, sorry to hear that Jason is leaving.
All right, Mayor, the only other one we have tonight is Lori, and she's going to talk about paratouring.
Okay. See you later, Chief. Hello, Ms. Attorney. Welcome.
Well, thank you for giving me another motorized vehicle to look into. I did some research, and so essentially what we're talking about is what the report I think was to the city was a concern about powered paragliders. And in doing I was asked to do some research on what are the regulations, what can the city do if those powered paragliders are flying over the town of Moab. What can we do? And my research has led to that the powered paragliders are governed by basically the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 14, Chapter I, Subchapter F, Part 103. And basically folks in the industry just call it Part 103. They are not under that section supposed to operate over congested areas. So it is actually not allowed that a powered paraglider operates over a congested area of a city, town, or settlement, or over any open air assembly of persons. And so the short answer is that it's governed by the FAA. If there are future issues with powered paragliders flying over a congested area, flying over Moab, the place to report that is the Salt Lake City Flight Standards Division, and their phone number is 801-257-5020. They take complaints of low-flying aircraft. And then, Joel, did you have anything else we should cover on that one?
I think you did a really good job. I did talk to some people who had information as to the individuals who were behaving this way. And they were individuals who were from out of town who were traveling the country. So we're hoping that this was a one-off.
I'm very grateful that you looked into that with such depth and such speed, because the comment was, are those UTVs in the sky?
I'm on it. I'm on it.
Thank you. Thank you. If maybe if we see continued activity, we can do a Facebook post with that phone number, and we can at least we're working with information now that we've gathered it. Thank you so much for being the most awesome attorney. I'm very grateful.
Thank you for the compliment.
Okay, moving right along. Unless there's anything else from you, Joel.
Nope. The highway's going good. They're still on course to have 4 lanes open by Thanksgiving. So keep your fingers crossed. That's it. Thank you.
That is such a big deal. I want to throw a barbecue when we have 4 lanes, but I can only invite 9 people. All right. Let's see. Where are we? We're on to Mayor and Council reports. I'll go first. I have just been doing a lot of UTV meetings and all things UTVs, and shout out to everybody that has sat and talked with me and met with me to follow up. And I just feel like that's going to be a hot topic for a long time. And I also should report that I met with Mary, the chair of the Grand County Council, Mary McGann, and the Jen Jones with BLM, and also Sandflats, and we just talked about the implication of the legislative action that we talked about at our special meeting, and we discussed, the chicken or the egg, which comes first, a policy that requires trailering or a parking lot that can accept trailers. And we all agreed that, a policy can come ahead of infrastructure as long as we partner together to make sure that we've got the infrastructure to handle any policies we pass. So I just want to share that because that's good news. That was the largest criticism that I was hearing of that potential legislation. Did we have the space to park trailers? And the question, the answer is we need to work on more trailer parking, but that shouldn't stop us from moving forward with legislative action. What else? I attended a ULCT board meeting, and we've already shared the really good news that came from that meeting. I think I've reported that I'm on the Grand County Economic Development Committee, and we are working to finalize a grant application for businesses to apply for additional state dollars that'll come through Grand County Economic Development Office and be advised by the board that I sit on. That could be a mechanism for us if we want to look at a way to distribute CARES funding. Clint and Joel, I just want to mention that's a possible avenue. I'm also serving on a commission, the rural subcommittee of the Commission on Housing Affordability. It sounds very boring, but it's actually a pretty awesome group working on potential legislation for the 2021 session. So I do hope to be engaged on several fronts with the legislature coming up, not just UTVs, but also on housing. And then finally, I don't know if any of you saw me on KUTV doing an interview, but that was a lot of fun. And I hope to distribute the interviews out to all of you so that you can stand in front of City Hall and have people rev their engines at you while you're being interviewed. And that's it from me. Ronnie?
What was the interview about?
UTV noise and our joint meeting.
Great. I'm going to try to make it fast, but there are a few just important things to hit on. And we had an EMS Special Service District board meeting on the 19th. I can hit some key points on that, but first and foremost, people should know, apparently today there was a miscommunication which led to demolition of the existing EMS building starting, I don't know if the right word is prematurely, but earlier than planned. It was already empty and everything, but needless to say, demolition has started. Apparently, according to the county, since it has started, it will proceed. But if anyone has questions, they can contact Grand County EMS or Chris Baird at the county. So I want to get that information out there because a lot of us might be hearing from neighbors wondering what's going on. Also, EMS had gone around before that and hung door hangers on a lot of the neighbors up on, I think the building is located at 540 East, 100 North. So they did door hangers for the seniors who live up in the senior apartments up there. And then also some residents on 100 North and Center. And I think some of the immediate ones on 400 East. And they are having a meeting to answer questions about the project of building the new EMS building up there. And now that demolition has started, I'm assuming the location will still be up on the old site, but you know, so just maybe check and see if the location will still be the same. But that's going to be October 26th from 6 to 7 p.m. in the parking lot up there, 540 East, 100 North. In terms of EMS calls, I'll just give you a few short items. Oops. Sorry, too many things open. Okay, year-to-date stats put EMS 5% behind our numbers in 2019. Call volumes over the last 4 weeks were compounded by the traffic that's been happening. So there have been some significant delays in service. I want to thank the mayor for working with the director of EMS to try and talk to UDOT about whether we might be able to open up an emergency lane on weekends to help with some of that. And you should all just know in terms of trends, the demand in terms of EMS calls going north of town continues to increase. They have at times tried to put an ambulance up in Thompson just to respond more quickly. But the director did say he doesn't think we're far off from at least seasonally needing a staff station at the airport or Thompson. Let me just see if there's anything else key you might want to know. Did make some additional income this year from EMS staff going on fire duty. So that helped some with our budget. Demolition, as I mentioned, has started, not plan A, but, and one of the questions related to that, so I did text some of you today, was you know, who all at the city needed to know that had happened. So I'm telling all of you, if someone is not in this meeting who needs to know at the city, please pass that on. Let's see, that might be enough for EMS. There probably could go on and on there about different facts. I did attend a legislative policy committee for the ULCT on the 19th of October as well. And then today we had our quarterly UMTRA steering committee meeting, and I'll just mention a few quickie things. If you missed the article in the Times Independent press release, I think they did move the, we now have moved 11 million tons, which means about, and that's out of an estimated 16 million. So 5 million tons left, we think. So that puts about 68% of the pile moved. So there is a possibility, if funding stays where it is, that the rest of that tonnage could be moved in 5 years, maybe less, because they keep finding new efficiencies. But just keep in mind, when all the dirt is moved, you still have to do some water remediation and cap piles. So you're not done when all the earth moves, but that's still great. It's a lot better than we were off a few years ago. 1,500 work days with no work time injuries. They have had a few COVID cases, but luckily they haven't passed any family members. They've been able to continue to work. The US Congress is in a continuing resolution for their budget. So that just means that for the UMTR project, we get the same amount of money we got last year, which is 45 million, which is good. We had been in the president's budget for 47 million. So we're still kind of hoping there's a chance of that. And I think that's probably the gist of what you guys might be interested in. And I was just going to mention to Lori, I think the chief left the call, but for your research on e-bikes on say the Parkway and such, definitely start with the Trail Mix Committee, because they can tell you the whole history of how the grant funding was gotten and how that all ties into that. So thanks.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Mike, you're up.
Yeah, we had a hotspot public meeting. Many of you guys went to that. Keep it quick, but once again, like the survey, I found that residents that I talked to were more interested really in transit and the Spanish Valley Shared Use Trail, and the notion, maybe it was Kalen that popularized the term complete streets. That notion of dispersed parking, which is kind of interesting. We've been voting on members of the hotspot committee on what parts of it we think most satisfy the UDOT criteria. And so it'll be interesting to see where UDOT takes all this. I've been kind of laying low, wondering if they're going to play hardball or not, but we're going to find out before too much longer. The USU Advisory Committee met for the first time in quite a long time, and Liana Hitchberger, the director there, solicited ideas from the members of the committee about how to get residents excited about the new building that is coming, she says. I think COVID has probably gotten in the way of that. And finally, as I said at another meeting, I've been having a good time actually going out with my noise meter, looking at UTVs and so forth. And that apparently has precipitated some interest from both our city attorney, Laurie, and from some of the journalists in the newspaper as well. So if they haven't all gone away, maybe we'll get out there on one of the roads and see if we can run down a few more just to give you guys an idea of what it actually looks like on the street.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks for being out there measuring noise. It's super fun, and it's always good to have good data. Tawny.
Oh, I wasn't able to get away from work to do the HASU meeting, and so I don't have any facts or figures on HASU, but from what I can tell, they're perking right along with their projects. Things seem to be going pretty smoothly, according to Ben. The museum meeting finalized their values and mission statement last week, and we generally do not have a meeting in November. We combine November and December's meetings. And at the December meeting, I think the search for new board members and new members of the museum will begin in earnest. The three-dimensional map that was always in the old museum is being restored, and it is coming back in pieces. It will be a work in progress, but it's actually not coming back to the museum. It's coming back to Moab, and it's been quite the process. So, but it will come back in puzzle pieces. So that's really all I have.
Okay, thanks, Tawny. Karen.
So like Mike mentioned, we had an open house at Moonstone Gallery, a much better turnout than our virtual meeting online. It was fun. The evening was lovely. Then we had a coordinating committee on the 21st, so last Wednesday, and it was use to further discuss and delve into the projects, the 3 projects that we are submitting to both the county and the rest of the city council who's not on the Arches Hotspot Committee. And UDOT just wanted to make it very clear to us that the rating of the projects goes very heavy on relieving congestion. In fact, it's rated at a 56% criterion compared to the other criteria of economic development and recreational opportunities. So it's something to keep in mind when we receive the survey information back. The community has an idea of how the money should be spent for the community, and we're trying to, like I said before, marry a good project for us locally and also relieving congestion for UDOT. So that's very important as we look at these at the projects moving forward. And then I met with John Nepstedt from Fear and Pierce. We just talked about transit at Swanee Park on Friday. And that was nice. He just came down to take some pictures. He hasn't been down to Moab in a while, and wanted to get a feel, and met with Chuck and with Lisa. So that was nice to try to reconnect with him in person. And that's it.
Thank you, Karen. Kaylin?
I attended the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments as a substitute for the mayor.
Thank you very much.
Yes, that was an interesting meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about, they needed a new headquarters building, which will serve several other functions, including food bank, building weatherization warehouse, and transit hub. It's a process for them as well. Even though they're a multi-county entity, they have the same struggles that we do to making hard decisions with limited information. But it was interesting. I realized that 4 other counties are talking about regional transit. And so that'll be interesting to see if our eventual transit planning can dovetail with that for outside of our valley. I attended a Arches Hotspot meeting, as has already been discussed. I attended a solid waste board meeting. We reviewed some options to improve our recycling processes, and we are also doing some strategic planning. So trying to figure out what our priorities are for the next year and few years. And we're also, we did a survey of residential and commercial users. The commercial survey is still open because we haven't gotten that many responses yet. Just trying to better understand both who uses the center, how, and how much they'd be willing to pay, since it's currently free and it requires a fair amount of subsidy. So in the spirit of the evening, I'll give you a few statistics. 44% of the recyclers are from the city of Moab, and 30% are from the outside the city in the Greater Valley. And our biggest age group category is the 65 plus, with 40% of users. I'll leave it at that. That's what I've got. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kaylin. That's it for reporting. Now we're moving into the approval of minutes. We've got minutes from October 8th and October 9th. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes for October 8th and 9th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion. Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Roll call. Kaylin.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Connie.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. On to old business, 9.1, Walnut Lane financing options. This is briefing and possible action. And I am so excited to say hello to my friend Alex. We are at the agenda item now where you're set to present to us and we get to see you. Yay.
Hello there.
Welcome to all of our homes.
Thank you very much. Before I start, Clint and Joel, do you want me to just lead into this, or did either of you want to brief everyone as to kind of what we've been doing the last week or two or three as we've been looking at different options?
Yeah, so Clint, myself, Caitlin, and Alex have been meeting quite frequently over the last month, really honing in what our options are for Walnut Lane. When we bought Walnut Lane 2 years ago, our idea was we were going to take advantage of the density and build some affordable housing and some low income housing for the most vulnerable population of our community. And that's still our goal and has been the whole time. As we've met with Alex and the time has went on, you know, we had the budget crisis and we had COVID, and we've realized that maybe we didn't have necessarily the funding that we thought we had in the beginning. The staff and Alex and his staff at Zions Bank have worked extremely hard and worked well together over the last, I would say, 6 months, really figuring out what our options are. And so tonight, Alex is going to present to you kind of two different, well, he's going to present one option and Caitlin's going to present another option. And we're going to present to you two different options, one being on the very low end of the scale of affordability, and the other one being what we all set out to do initially. We can kind of find a common ground anywhere between that because staff has worked and put together this package that really, with Alex and Zions Bank's help, we can probably build all the way up to what we initially set out to do. And Alex is going to present that information to you to show you how we can bond and what the bonding rates are and how this is going to work for us going forward. We could build the $14 million project, or we could build a $4 million project. It's kind of up to staff, or kind of up to council, to give us direction as to how you guys want to go forward. The one thing that we as staff are recommending is that we do this on a 15-year bond, regardless of whatever route we take and whatever amount we choose to bond out of. And Alex can explain to you the details of all of that. But the reality is, if we go beyond 15 years, we start getting to adjustable rates, and we pay 16 through 20 at those adjustable rates, and they could be much more than what we lock into. And we don't want to pay more interest than we have to anyway. So the 15 years is a better plan. And then we don't get gouged on the back end of the 16 to 20. So I want to thank Alex and his team. I really want to thank Caitlin and Clint and Chuck and Barry and Bonnie and Kelly for all the effort and all the work, the streets crews that are maintaining the grounds, cutting the weeds. We've literally taken this over, and we work on this every day, all day, even when we're not working on the finance side. You guys know it was basically 0 degrees 2 mornings ago, and we've been dealing with trailers and frozen pipes and broken furnaces. And the last 2 days, one gentleman we've been trying to relocate into housing. So it's just constant every day, all day. And staff has done an amazing job to get us to the point tonight where we have the ability to say, we want to build the 80 unit, take advantage of the density, bond out $14 million over our sales tax revenue and lock us in on that vision. Or we want to do this trailer for trailer swap. Maybe the trailers are nicer, maybe they're exactly what we're saying, and go from there. So that's where we're at. I'm going to turn the time over to Alex and let him do his presentation, and then Caitlin will follow Alex and kind of give you some of the information she has, and then we'll open it up to discussion and see what we can work out tonight as far as moving forward. So thank you all.
All right, thanks, Joel. Before I start, I just wanted to say, when Joel and Clint invited me to participate in the meeting tonight last week, I was really excited because I thought it was going to be an opportunity for me to travel down to my very, very favorite place in the state of Utah, Moab City. And no, I don't say that to all the other cities that I work with, because truly Moab is my very, very favorite place. So then they told me that it was a virtual meeting. And so I couldn't really justify the I guess, the time and expense to drive down and then log in from a hotel room in Moab and drive home later. So sadly, I'm here at my home in Sandy, and I hope that sometime very soon I will be able to drive down to Moab and be with you guys in person, because I love going down there. And had one other little thing. I was happy to hear that although you guys are losing one of your best police officers, it sounds like my city is gaining that same police officer. So happy to know that we're getting one of Moab's finest up here in Sandy City. So like Joel mentioned, we for several months now have worked with Clint and with Joel and Caitlin. I commend them for all the different scenarios and different amounts and structures and things that they've asked us to look at. They've been very diligent and thorough in wanting us to look at all the different options to finance this Walnut Lane project. And what I think we've come up with that I know Caitlin's going to talk a little bit more about as well, but the city, Moab, has, as you saw with Clint's presentation earlier that I was also online for, one of the, I guess, few silver linings of everything that's going on right now is your sales tax is actually higher now than it was a year ago at this time. Seems like everyone is catching on to it, how great of a place Moab is, and you've had certainly record numbers over the last couple of months. So the thought is a sales tax bond is probably going to be the city's best solution in borrowing the money for the Walnut Lane project. When you issue a sales tax bond, you can secure the bonds with your sales tax revenues, but that does not mean that you have to pay back the bond with your sales tax revenues. The source of repayment can be different than the source of security. And so what we've done is we've assumed that the city would utilize their sales tax as a kind of a credit backstop, if you will, by issuing a sales tax revenue bond, but then utilize the rental payments of the upcoming project to pay back the debt. And the sweet spot, if you will, based on some of the information that Caitlin has put together, we feel is probably around $650,000 a year, which would be what is projected for that income off of the property. So what we've done is we've tried to back into that same amount for debt service each year over a 15-year bond, like Joel mentioned. Currently, the city has 3 sales tax bonds outstanding. You have a 2003, a 2009, and a 2018 sales tax bond. They may mature at various points in time. I think the longest bond goes out until 2035, which coincidentally would be the same maturity of this bond. It would go out 15 years from now. And what we try to always do is when you issue these sales tax bonds, you want to try to maintain at least a 2 times coverage. In other words, if your annual payment on all your sales tax bonds is $1 million, we want to make sure you have at least $2 million of revenue coming in. That's essentially the kind of the industry standard when it comes to sales tax bonds. Lenders, if you will, would always like to see that you have at least 2 times coverage. Currently, the city has well over 20 times coverage on the existing bonds. And with this new bond, assuming we stayed within that $650,000 annual payment we feel like with current market conditions, you could probably issue about an $8.5 million bond, give or take, and still maintain that $650 annual payment. We estimate interest rates on a 15-year bond right now to be about 2%, which really is not quite at all-time lows over the last 30 years or so. The all-time lows were a couple of months ago in August, but rates are near all-time lows. I would say there's only been 1 or 2% of the time, less than 2% of the time over the last 30 years that municipal bond interest rates have been lower than they are right now. So I know that construction costs, from what I have seen on different projects I've worked on, are pretty high right now. On the flip side, interest rates to borrow the money for those projects are extremely low right now. So anyway, on a 2%, estimated 2% interest rate, and with that $8 to $9 million bond, that new bond, putting it into the coverage table that we've created, still provides the city over 9 times coverage. And that is using what I believe is and Clint can speak better to this, but what we feel is a pretty conservative sales tax revenue number of $9 million a year. And we've kept that $9 million the same this year all the way throughout 2035. As we saw again on Clint's presentation earlier, certainly the expectation would be that every year that sales tax revenue would increase. And so as that increases, the coverage for your sales tax bonds is only going to get stronger. But keeping that $9 million amount from top to bottom still provides you nine times coverage, which is tremendous. If you're wondering what your future bonding capacity would be if you encumber some of your sales tax revenue to secure this Walnut Lane financing, again, just based on those conservative numbers, the $9 million amount for the next 15 years, you'd still have the capacity of about $40 million, a little less than $40 million of future sales tax revenue debt. Again, that you could issue or do other projects, securing them with your sales tax and still maintain that 2 times coverage. So again, very healthy coverage, and I think it would be an easy financing to get done. I'm happy to answer any questions, anything that I've already discussed, or Clint, you or Joel, or Caitlin, I guess too. I see that you've joined. If there's anything that I haven't covered that we discussed on our multiple conference calls, let me know, and I'm happy to talk about those or answer any questions from council or the mayor.
Thank you so much for laying that out for us. And just to be very clear, so are we talking about if an $8.5 million bond at 2%?
Correct.
Okay. Councilman Member Duncan?
Yeah. So guys, Rachel, before she left the position, my understanding is that the biggest loan that the city has out right now is a big one for a water treatment plant. Is that a sales tax encumbered loan? In other words, I remember Rachel telling us that she wouldn't advocate additional large loans as being bad financial policy with that bond out. I don't know if the rest of you guys would agree with that, but I remember that's what she said. If I've got that right, Joel, have I got that right? Is that
the WRF was secured through bonding that was relying upon impact fees for sewer rates or for sewer impact fees going forward. So this bond was not secured through sales tax. It was through a different revenue source. Okay. That's a whole nother can of worms though.
Hey, we're not talking about those worms.
So no, the answer to your question is no.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, council member.
So I'm just curious, and so what the amounts we have in 2003 and 9 and 18, how much money's out there? Do we know?
Yeah, I can look that up. I don't have it right in front of me, but if you want to give me a minute, I can pull that up and I can tell you exactly.
So can I. I'll pull it up really quick.
All right, well then it's a race. You can pull that up first.
We've sat through literally hours and hours and hours of these conversations. So Karen, when you ask for stuff like that, like
All right, I've got it here.
Alex is the winner.
I don't want to steal Clint's thunder. So what I have, and Clint, I know he has the same debt schedules, but I'm showing that on the 2003 bond, there's about 1.2 million left outstanding. Those payments are approximately $110,000, $111,000 a year, and they go up through 2029. On the 2009 bond, I'm showing an annual payment of $191,000 a year, and that goes up through 2035. That was the one that I alluded to earlier. The 2008 bond, which was done through the Community Impact Board, that has an annual payment of around $46,000 a year. There's $791,000 remaining on that, and that also pays off in 2035. And anyway, that's what I've got there.
Okay.
Does that work with your numbers, Clint?
Yes.
Karen, were you curious about the what those covered?
Yes.
I'll send the council all of our long-term debt and where they are at in our amortization tables as well.
Oh, that would be great.
I mean, Alex, I'm just curious, is there any trepidation? I mean, especially because, we were so affected out of, one of the highest communities in the state of Utah, being affected with their sales tax revenue. And I know things have rebounded, but I mean, is there trepidation to rely on that? I mean, I think it made us all nervous, come March, that what we've always expected completely vanished. So I mean,
yeah, and others may be able to speak on this as well, but my thought is, because the city is not relying on the sales tax to repay the debt, again, it's only being used as a credit enhancement or to secure the bonds. It's the rental payments that, from my understanding, will be used to actually pay the debt, which, again, Caitlin will certainly be able to speak to that better than I will. But I think it's a fair concern, Karen. But like I mentioned earlier, the sales tax numbers are so good and the coverage is so high. I can't imagine ever the sales tax dropping so significantly to where you wouldn't be able to maintain at least the 2 times coverage. Now, if the sales tax revenues do go down instead of up, like they have typically always done in Moab, then that would affect your ability to use those revenues as a security instrument for future projects, but it shouldn't affect ever your ability to repay this bond that we're talking about now.
Okay, so that 40 million in the future would be what we would be.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The big. Did you want to add something, Joel?
Yeah, a couple things. This is kind of why we're bringing you a spectrum of what your options are. If you go with what Caitlin's going to present, then the revenue from the rent will totally cover the bond. If you go with what Alex is telling you, with about the $8 million mark, they still should. And if we went all the way up to 14, then we would be offsetting that with sales tax revenue that would secure that amount. The thing too, Karen, it's an excellent question. Do we want to use our sales tax to issue the bond? Where we don't have a property tax, it's our only source of revenue. It's the only thing we can use to get a bond. So if we're going to bond for any amount, we have to use our sales tax revenue. It's the only revenue source we have in the city of Moline.
Right. I mean, it comes into question, would it be more important to use it on infrastructure compared to something that could be extrapolis? Like, I mean, not that affordable housing isn't essential, but there's other ways and other entities trying to make that happen. So
yeah, I think that's the struggle, like we as a staff have had the whole time, is like, that's the thing, is like, what are we prioritizing one thing over another? How do we create that prioritization? And that's why we're bringing you this sliding scale of like, we need you guys to tell us if infrastructure is going to be the priority, like you're saying, Karen, then the project needs to be what Caitlin's saying and come in where it completely pencils and the rent pays for this and no sales tax goes towards it. If the goal is to maximize density, prioritize low income and housing in our community because we don't have any, which is completely reasonable, then we want to build the $14 million project. We take the rents that offset some of it. We then bond for the remainder and use sales tax to pay for some of that. And then we just are prioritizing that housing over infrastructure, which is, we don't know the answer to that. And I can tell you this from the staff's perspective, we've struggled with that question the whole time. That's why we're doing it this way. And we don't really have a suggestion for you on how to solve that. We've brought you the best option for how to solve this problem. We've weeded out everything else that has been, there's other ways to do this, but they're not very good. This is the best way to do it. And we want you guys to tell us, we want it to be the 14 million. We want it to be the 5 million. We want it to be the 8 million. We want you to set that policy priority and then we'll execute it. As staff, there's no wrong answer for us. If you say it's the low end and we want to prioritize going for bonding or more money towards infrastructure later on, we fully understand that we need that as well, and we'll execute that. If it's 14 million, maximize the density, get us more housing, we fully understand that our community needs that and we'll execute that. So we're fully on board with whatever policy this council is ready to set for us.
Well, and I just want to go back to Alex, what you were saying, how we were backing into the amount. So the 650,000, is that roughly, that was the monthly or the annual payment? And that is based on a pro forma for the 80, how many units, Caitlin, maybe you can answer that, or Alex, you can answer that. What is the scope of the project?
Yeah, so I can clarify that. So the numbers that Alex has been talking about is specifically to the pad scenario that I sent you guys. So that's $14 million project, but based on that scenario with the rent revenues, we could only take on a monthly pay or an annual payment of $650. But in each of those different scenarios, and based on Caitlin's comments from earlier today, I have a couple of new ones to show you. So I think whichever avenue you select, the annual payment and the overall bond that we'll need for that project, it varies a little bit. But that's where Alex was getting those numbers from, was from that pad scenario that I sent you guys on Friday.
Because, there's definitely the option of just playing with the pro forma and looking at different income levels, different total number of units, and I think and then finally, and Alex, you may be a great partner for this. If we've got a gap in what we can collect in rents and what the project will cost, it would also be interesting for us to see if we can't fill that gap with money from the state or from an outside funding source that supports affordable housing projects. So I don't know, Alex, if that's kind of too far out of scope to discuss, or if Caitlin, you've got access to some kind of source. But I do think that that's worth considering.
Yeah, Alex and I and some other city staff, we met with one of his partners at Zions Bank, Shalene, and we've talked to her several times about that. Zions has started working on affordable housing impact investing. And so she's been really interested in partnering with this project, but all of those kind of conversations have kind of concluded with, we're really excited about your project, but we need more information about the direction that you're going, how much it's going to cost, what's your timeline, what does the project look like. So, I mean, that's part of the reason why we're having this conversation today, is to identify the amount of gap that we need, if there is gap that we need, so that we can go back out to some of those people that we've been talking to say, okay, here's our plan. And now we can really start talking logistics about getting additional funding. So we've definitely had those conversations. Would be interested if Alex or others have other ideas for that. I know that it's out there, but we just have to have a real plan to bring forward before we can progress with some of those.
Yeah, and I just concur with what Caitlin says, and I think you bring up a great point, Mayor. Certainly we'd want to try to explore every avenue available. If whatever, the cheapest money, or if there's grant money or whatever we could access to bridge the gap, if the full 14 million is needed, or whatever number you go with, we would work with city staff to make sure that we look at all avenues to try to get the cheapest money possible.
Mike.
Let me ask a philosophical question. Let's just suppose that we elected to go with the manufactured homes, the $4 or $5 million job. My question for all of us, both the residents and council and residents here of the town, as well as residents of the Walnut Lane subdivision, if we end up with 40 new trailer homes, for example, will we, when it's all the dust has settled, so to speak, are we going to look at this as defeat? In the sense that, oh boy, this wasn't anything close to what you guys were originally contemplating. And I can't, people might say, I can't believe you guys settled for this. All right. I mean, that would be one possible reaction. It's also possible that the residents of Walnut Lane, both the current residents and the ones who would inhabit that place in years to come, might say, I am so delighted to have these brand new trailers compared to what we have had. And keeping in mind that Walnut Lane is the town's most affordable housing development, and there's a need for that sort of thing. We as a council might still be proud to go anywhere else in the state or anywhere else in the country and say, hey, considering COVID and funding restrictions and everything else, we are still proud of what we built here, and the residents are delighted to inhabit brand new trailer homes. And it leaves us some money to do other worthwhile things that the city needs to be done, and we can still be proud of what we've done. So that's scenario number 2. And frankly, I don't know where the reaction might stand, but that would factor into my decision, because clearly if we're going to look at this as just a losing proposition to build manufactured homes, then we'll have to find some way to bridge the gap. And to me, it strikes me as kind of a stretch to do that. We can do all the things, Emily and Alex, that you guys are talking about. But given all the other hurdles that the city has with financing in the years to come, I'd rather not, if the cheaper solution might suffice. So that's my question for you guys.
Well, let me take a stab at that real quick, because I think that's an important question that this council needs to ask ourselves. The reason why we're looking at, this 14 million versus the 4 million is that we get more housing. So we can only get so many homes if we go with the trailer replacement, replacing a trailer with a new trailer model. If we go with a larger scale development, we can double the amount of units, the number of units. And from an equity perspective, remember that we would have an asset. So we would have a developed property that is income producing. And after we've paid a bond off in 15 years, the city is, it's just the same reason why you would buy a house instead of rent an apartment, because you are, for every dollar that you're putting into the property, you're building equity. So in 15 years, we would have an investment, and something that, if we had a project, think about, I could do a cash out finance, a refinance of my home to pay for my little thing that I'm doing over here. So could the city utilize this asset as leverage in the future? So that's kind of, I'm glad that you asked that question, that philosophical question, because I think it's a question that we can really ponder, those of us that have grappled with that question ourselves, whether or not to rent or own. Kaylin, you had your hand up, and then Karen.
So I've been going over these scenarios, and I do have a proposal for moving forward, but I feel like we're not there yet. I understand that Caitlin is still going to present, but I'm ready to propose something that I haven't run by staff and may not be so feasible, but I think it might be a way forward when the time is right.
Well, why don't you just throw your wild card out there? We'll give you crickets. Karen will talk. Caitlin will present, and then we'll get back to you. How about that? I'm curious. Okay,
so since one of the things driving this is the need to provide better, somewhat like acceptable housing in the short term, and my proposal is that we go forward with the minimum number of Stratton manufactured homes to meet the short-term needs, because they're a lot cheaper, they're easier to move, and they still have decent insulation, and they're a little bigger. Like the Indie Dwell, they're nice for what they are, but they look really tight for a family, just in terms of the available interior space. And given what I'm guessing the needs are, that may not be so ideal. And then master planning continues with the intention to do the rest as site built, because the per square foot costs are less than in the current, and aiming towards pad. But with pad, phase 2 is also modular, which has a really high per unit cost. And so I'm thinking if those could be site built, that could save like 1.5 million to cover that gap, and as well as the other benefits. And then continue to analyze, like I still have unanswered questions about, and I hear that we all do, about how we're gonna, other financing sources, which populations income-wise we're going to serve. And then also give us more of a chance to look at how much of our potential capitalization ability do we want to spend on housing versus other things, because maybe we've bitten off more than we can chew, but we don't need to spit it all out. Like maybe we decide that we're going to partner with another developer and like not develop all the land, and save some of the money for just do a smaller project, but still do a project that we can be proud of and have more capital for infrastructure. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, we're gonna allow for crickets, and then Karen, you had a comment, and then Caitlin, you'll present.
Well, Kaylin hit on it, because our last meeting, there was a real sense of urgency that we needed to move very quickly for the residents that are living there right now. And so I just was curious with that, the $14-15 million build out. I mean, I mean, I think all of us would probably like to go that route, but thank you, Kaylin, for presenting a solution, because it seems like that would be a possibility, because we do need to make a move and we need to do something quickly unless that's changed. And then I'm just curious, like, what are we getting for $8.5 million? Like, how many units could, and I guess maybe that's what you're going to present, Caitlin? No?
Well, real quick, just to answer that, what Caitlin was asking for at our last meeting was to move forward with the 8-plex, so the immediate response. So it's kind of what you just presented, Caitlin, but with Indie Dwell and a corner of the development, and we would still move forward. And at this point, manufactured units are just as available as modular in terms of time. And then I'm assuming that the 8 Indie Dwell units are folded into that 14 million number. Is that correct, Caitlin? All right. Well, let's have you present. Joel wants to add one thing before you do, though.
The urgency has not left. We worked all day today to relocate a gentleman whose trailer is failing. So like none of that's changed, but nonetheless, we have to get, if we don't want to go that route, we need to make a decision to go. We have to make a decision to go somewhere. That's where we're at.
You guys, what is the plan? I mean, it's winter and no matter like Indie Dwell or whatever was presented, nothing could happen till, March or April.
There is no plan.
But that is not true. Staff has been working very hard to make sure that
years old, like today, when this gentleman's furnace quit working, the wiring in the system won't even support portable heaters to put portable heaters in the unit to run a portable heater. So like, they're just failing. There's no plan for the ones we can fix, we've fixed. The ones we can't, we've moved people out, moved them into other housing through the help of other community groups. And we've moved those trailers out because they're failed. And we started, I think, with approximately 40 trailers, and we're down to 34. I mean, some of them they're literally just failing, and we're having to scramble to find housing for people. That's what's happening.
So have you guys worked out all the leases and all, because I know that was quite a headache before. I mean, is that all clarified?
It's still ongoing as far as how we're dealing with the trailers that we don't own that are sitting on our property, because we don't know what we're doing with the project long term. So we don't know how to negotiate out of those situations. So some of those situations still exist, because until we can offer, if we're building 80 units under the $14 million model, well, then maybe what we do is we offer so much free time in the new unit or discounted rent towards the purchase of their trailer to get it off our property.
Or equity in the unit that we would fit into.
But also to answer your question, Karen, Barry and I have worked a lot with Marcy on that. I think that we have gotten a lot better. We have leases from, other than some of the situations that Joel's talked about, we have updated leases with the tenants and the city, not through any of the old, some of the leases that we had were from like 1995. So we have updated leases. Even today I was talking to Full Circle about getting utilities and rent assistance for a few of the trailers out there. I've worked with MBMC to do the same. So we have done a lot. I mean, we're working all the time on trying to solve a lot of these issues. A lot of our tenants were really affected by COVID, and so that's been really complicated over the last few months. But it's definitely a lot better.
Yeah, we've resolved all of them that we can, that are just sitting at this point. I can promise you this, Moab City is the best property management company in this county. That's a fact.
Okay, Caitlin, let's have you present, because it's 8:45 and I'm going to give us another 15 minutes and then we're moving on.
Okay. Also, I don't know, Alex, if you want to stay for this, you are welcome to. You don't have to if you don't want to. But I was just going to share this Excel document that has all of these different scenarios. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of up to the council about whether you'd like me to walk through all of them or not. Kaylin did ask me to put together a scenario for Stratton Homes. So this scenario is for 40 units. So, part of the reason why I'm still working in the Excel document is if we do want to have conversations more specifically about changing the number of units or the rents or anything like that, we can do that live. So Stratton Homes, the units are a little bit cheaper. They are like as units themselves. I think the way that their bid was outlined, the units were less expensive, but the cost of work per unit was a little bit more. So overall, the project cost came out a little bit more than for factory homes, but like Kaylin pointed out earlier, these are, they're a little bit bigger than some of the units with factory homes, and they have better insulation. They have Energy Star upgrades. They're all electric instead of gas and electric. So a little bit different, I think, a little bit higher quality unit if we're comparing manufactured to manufactured. So I wanted to share that scenario. And then this evening, preparing for this, I created a very first stab at a pro forma for the pad development using a breakdown of AMI instead of the original scenario that I sent you guys. So this is a little bit more complicated to look at, I recognize, but kind of using and I talked to Ben Riley at the Housing Authority about how the Housing Authority calculates their income-based rentals. So I can show you more specifically that information that's on a different Excel spreadsheet, but I pulled those numbers in based on each income bracket, what they are for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And then I kind of did a best guess what I think, I think that I'll still want to work with the Chic and the Architectural Square team and our team as staff to hash out these numbers, but just to give you a first look at, doing an income-based pad development versus that first stab that I showed you. As I told you in an email, we still don't have income information for any of the tenants out at Walnut Lane. So this breakdown of incomes, kind of assumes spaces for all of them, but isn't specific to the current tenants out there. So kind of an even split of extremely low income, very low income, and low income units. And with the extremely low income, I added apartment units for those, for the extremely low and very low. Low income added a couple of the modular. Obviously, if we went with Kaylin's idea of doing site built, that all of this would change. But just kind of based on our existing site plan right now. So low income, moderate income, going all the way up to 100% AMI, which is the, per the definition pad, I pulled that in here. Also kind of wanted to bring back in the conversation about updating the pad. I know we've talked about, you guys had the strategic planning session with the planning commission earlier. I do think that there are a few changes that need to be made with the pad. Specifically, the first one that kind of makes even this pro forma challenging is that in the pad code, as it says right now, it says that the monthly rental rate shall be calculated at an amount that does not exceed 30% of the area median income for a Grand County household. So that doesn't quite make sense. It should be 30% of monthly income or something. Anyway, so I do think that we'll have to do some amendments to the pad. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we look at this, if there are other ways that the council would like to kind of based on this project, we're in our planning department working on some recommendations on how to amend the pad to make it a little bit easier, especially with affordability definitions to make it more appetizing for developers. But anyway,
Is the bottom line here, Caitlin, that this cash equity need, the 1.4, is the difference between what we can borrow and what am I reading that correctly? So the readjustment of the rents we can receive, we've brought the total project cost.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm thank you, Caitlin, for recommending I do this. I think it was a really helpful exercise. One, because we'll have to do it in general, but two, because kind of breaking down low income and moderate income, because they are a little bit higher rents than what we were assuming with just doing a flat rate $500 deduction. Also, I'm seeing all of you guys squint. I can zoom in a little bit more.
It's okay. You're going to share it with us, I'm sure, as well. But I think,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but I mean, that is something really significant to point out is doing it this way and kind of focusing on the low to moderate income really changes the construction loan amount. I mean, so it drops our cash equity need from this kind of flat rate first model from 3.5 to basically 1.5.
And I'm just going to say it like help with the plain English that you're saying. So because we have more rent, we can borrow more. But I think so are we still going to be at that 2%? I don't know if Alex is still with us. Is that still at the 2%?
Yeah. So I should also point out it will change because up until our meeting with Alex yesterday, we have been talking about doing a 20 years. So changing it to 15 years obviously increases our annual debt service across any of these. So that'll be another thing that the council will need to kind of decide on, is whether you want to take on a shorter bond with Zions Bank that's flat rate. The biggest difference if we go to 20-year bond is the years, as Alex was talking about earlier, the years from 16 to 20 are going to be at a variable rate. So that is something.
Can we refinance after 15 years? Just like you would, like if you get a home loan and you know that like in 15 years you're going to start having a variable rate. At that point, you would refinance. Is that a thing?
Yeah, and that is something that we'd want to include as part of the terms of the bond, would be a prepayable anytime, where you could refinance, you could pay it off early without penalty. So anybody that does take on a longer term with variable rate, that's what I usually tell them is, hey, if excuse me, if at any point in time that rate goes up so high that you want to pay it off or refinance it, you can certainly do that. Basically, though, the variable rate is based on an index that a lot of other banks would use as well. And so keep in mind that if the rate goes up on a Zions Bank loan, odds are other banks' interest rates are going to be up as well, since a lot of banks use the same methodology to determine what their interest rates are. But yes, you could pay it off or refinance it.
And then if we're just 5 years out of total payoff, we could refinance it to 10 years and continue to pay, still be in the black in terms of rents received versus our monthly payment, or sorry, our annual payment.
Yeah. If you wanted to refinance it and take on a longer term, again, you'd be refinancing at what rates are at that point in time, which is an unknown, but you could restructure it any way you want.
So, and if we do the 20-year rate, I mean, we will start to cash flow. I mean, it also depends. We can change up unit counts and that kind of thing, but we will start to cash flow in year 5. So we would be able to put down more towards those payments if you would want to. So that's another option as well with that.
Wait, but Caitlin, at the 20-year, I would stay at 2.02. Is that?
It would be 2.02 for the first 15 years. Is that correct, Alex?
Yeah,
Yeah.
more or less. It is essentially there's 2 ways to handle the variable rate piece. If you want me to go to a little more detail, you can either lock in the first 15 years up front, but then years 16 through 20 get reset every 5 years. So after 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years, the years 16 through 20 would get reset. But when you do that, the initial rate is the 5-year rate if you're willing to reset every 5 years. If you want to lock in the first 15 years but have it reset on year 10, then you use the 10-year rate, which in this case, both of those rates are actually lower than the 202. So initially, that 202 would actually be lower. Again, I'd have to pull up the numbers, but I want to say the true interest cost at the beginning would be around a 165. So quite a bit lower than that. But even though 15 maturities are fixed, because you have to adjust 16 through 20, that would start to affect the annual payment either up or down, depending on where rates are, after year 5, if you go with the first option, or after year 10, if you go with the second option. Did I just confuse everybody a lot more?
No, but I mean, that's how we got into a housing crisis in 2008 is because people were doing that adjustable rates and thinking everything was going to stay low. I mean, I'm not comfortable. Like, this is something that we're doing. We're pretending we're doing this for the community, but this is actually something we're doing to the community after we're out of office, and I have no idea what those, what kind of interest we would be looking at at that first 5 years. So,
and Alex explained the percentages of our coverage and where we're at. We can totally cover the bond. It's a non-issue. That's why we're recommending you do the 15-year, pay the little extra up front and not ever have to worry about it. And then not only do you pay it and never have to worry about that, it saves us money, interest long-term, and it frees up debt servicing sooner for other projects rather than running it out longer over time.
yeah.
Right.
And do we have money? Is the money in the Wahoo what we would then spend?
You're muted,
that?
Mayor.
Oh, I'm muted?
I can hear her fine.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Maybe I should speak up a little bit. The money in the Wahoo, could that go toward the land and cash equity need? The cash equity need? It just got started again, so.
Yeah, I just changed it. I mean, it could also go towards, so this 14 million also includes the loan that we have on the property. So the Wahoo could also go toward paying off that loan.
But if we got the loan for the 14 and then the land was the Wahoo and we were collecting rents, and then I just want to make absolutely sure that our pro forma has in it maintenance, that we're collecting more than just paying off our debt service.
Yeah, so right now we are, so I just changed this just to show you, even changing it to 15 years. It's not changing. Weird. But yeah, so we are including, and this is kind of just what I, especially since this will be a new project, we added 20% for operations and maintenance, and a 3% capital reserve fund. So that does include all of that, and it also includes a 7% vacancy rate, which is typical. So if council would like to increase the O&M, we can, but I think that that's fairly standard to do 20%.
Those are reasonable numbers. Should we, it's 9 o'clock now. And so I know that you need direction from the council. And this has definitely been a really good conversation. Do you need for me to straw poll how we're going to move forward? Caitlin, what you need direction, don't you?
I do. I have had bids since mid-September, so I need to get a response to bidders about direction, or at least start. I also don't know how much the unit costs have changed since we received bids in September. I've gotten some initial numbers, but would like some straw poll direction about how council would like to proceed, so that at the next meeting we can talk about bringing a contractor who you'd like to award a bid to.
So then let's just start off with this. So council, just by show of hands, who would like to pull the plug and just go to a trailer replacing, new trailers replacing old trailers model? Who's interested in that? Mike is interested? Or any other council members interested in that? Okay, so raise your hands if you are feeling like you want to maximize the density and you understand that is more fiscally complicated. Okay, there's 3 and Karen is conflicted. She so I think, it's probably worth it to say the direction to you, Caitlin, is to continue on the track that we've been on, which is the bigger, maximizing the square footage that we have of the lot, and doing the density that we can, being really clear that the pad in the R4, that we have to be flexible as a council and really consider changing pieces of the pad. I think that's great. I think that's responsible of us, because that's a mechanism that we've worked on for affordability, and we get to be our own customer. I think we'll learn a lot, and I would hope that we can quickly pass any changes to the pad, knowing that if they benefit us, they're going to benefit developers that also want to utilize the pad. So then just going a little further and polling the council for direction. Caitlin, what else do you need clarity on? Because I think we would like, I'll speak for us for just a second and you all scream at me, unmute and scream if I'm wrong. But I think we need, we've gone through scenarios. I think we need just a solid proposal then of the 81 units, the AMIs, the whole breakdown where we can see it and have some time and try to absorb it before we make a final decision on it. Council, do you raise your hand if you agree with that? Of wanting to have a more finalized pro forma? Nobody. Okay, Ronnie.
Well, no, I just wanted to ask the question. I mean, I spent a lot of time with these numbers, and granted, I don't always understand the construction stuff so well, but I spent a lot of time trying to understand like unit cost. And I read all the notes you sent me. Thank you, Caitlin, explaining kind of pros and cons of modular versus manufactured. And so I do feel like I spent a lot of time trying to think about it. And my one holdup in, I mean, you could probably get me to vote for the pad option tonight if someone, but I feel like the one hole in my knowledge is really understanding. It seems like there was some illusion tonight that we're basically choosing between infrastructure and housing. And I kind of need to understand that better if that's the case. Like, am I choosing between replacing water pipes and sewer, or not necessarily? Because that's kind of what I need to know. Like, is doing this, and Joel looks like he wants to talk.
Yeah, no, Ronnie, I appreciate you bringing up that and seeking clarity for it. It's not a matter of that's what we're choosing. It's just a matter of there's only so much money to do way more than we could ever afford. So anytime we choose to do any project, we're theoretically prioritizing that over other projects. And that's what we were saying is like, if you don't spend it here, we will spend it somewhere else. Like, the question isn't whether or not we're bonding. The question is, are we bonding for this? And that's perfectly a great answer what you guys are saying tonight. Does that answer your question?
I mean, that's the only thing hanging me up. Like, I feel like, we all went into this project wanting to provide low to low income housing and to commit to that. So I feel like we made that commitment a while back, and we don't want it to be 100% market rate. That's not what we're here for. But I just am, I am just trying to understand. Yes, am I trading one thing for another? Only because I feel like, I almost have to choose. If I was choosing water pipes and sewer pipes versus this, then I kind of have to choose the pipes because they serve the whole community, or a big neighborhood, as opposed to maybe 80 units. So that's just the last thing I'm personally trying to digest, but otherwise I'm ready to go.
That's the hard decision that we all face. And, you can make an argument that by approving 81 units here or 80 units here, that this is the backbone that runs all of our economy and does all that work. And that's supporting the whole community by providing that level of workers. So like, I don't have that answer. That's a philosophical, really hard question to answer.
Well, let me take a stab at that though, Ronnie. Like, the wastewater reclamation facility was bonded on impact fees. So, it's not even if we had to do another infrastructure project, I don't know that we would even consider bonding on sales tax anyway. When we think about the bond on sales tax is really a guarantee, because if we can be in the black where our rents cover the cost of the project, then we do still have capacity to do other projects. We're doing a huge parking infrastructure project, and that's all hotspot funding. And so I think that it's good for us to look at different revenue streams. And I think if we're going to bond on sales tax, we do it where we actually have income that we can depend on. And so I don't see it as taking away from infrastructure, but I also do see it as asset building for our community. So back to what you said, Karen, that we're just building it out, at them. Like, think about the asset that we all have in home ownership. Those of us that own our home, that is an asset. That's an asset that is then leverageable. And so an investment in the units and in the people of our community, that's what this project really is. And in 15 years, if it's paid off, that's a pretty sweet asset. A big 81 unit development downtown. That's something we could leverage, Tawny?
I was just going to say, I agree with Ronnie. It is a concern that when you commit money to this project, that you're maybe not making this project a priority. But I agree with you. We all went into this with our eyes pretty wide open. We knew what we wanted. We didn't have exact aesthetics figured out, but we knew that this was a low to very low income project, and we wanted to make it as much of an asset to the city as we possibly could. And I think turning it around right now and doing, you know, a trailer for trailer swap isn't what any of us had envisioned. And you're right, Mayor. If we've got income coming in that pays those payments, even though they're bonded on our sales tax, that's an ideal situation. And I think we should just maximize the density and do what we wanted to do.
Mhm. I think I'm ready to go. I just, whatever you guys want, if we want to see a clean document, you know, with numbers that you guys are confident in.
Karen?
I mean, I know we're trying to reach the, you know, low and the extremely low income bracket, but I'm a huge proponent of a multi income community, because those are the most successful, and this is such an ideal location, and being downtown and the walkability and the health benefits, and hopefully reducing, you know, the requirements for vehicles, because we are in a downtown area. I mean, there's good benefits to making that happen.
Well, it seems like Caitlin's numbers run from 30% AMI well over 100%, right?
Yeah, and that's because you, Karen, when we were negotiating the pad, you negotiated that into the income spread and made that exact comment. And that is what this pro forma that Caitlin's showing us right now reflects. So
yeah, I would also just like to throw in, I totally agree. That's been one of my goals for this. And I want to throw in a comment from Ben Riley earlier. We were talking a little bit about me developing this pro forma, and he told me that the MAPS project, their market rate units in that project leased up within the first day. There's a huge need for market rate, especially in this location. So yeah, I mean, I think that I am really excited about figuring out a mix across all incomes. I think there's a huge need, and agree with your comments that it makes a complete community. So,
and we need that offset in the rents in order to be able to provide the low income.
Yes.
So what are we gonna do here? Are we gonna straw poll? Can we give Caitlin a thumbs up? Are we finding ourselves mostly united and moving forward?
One quick question, Mayor. Caitlin, if I got this right, no matter what we do, the residents there this winter are still stuck with living in their old trailers. Is that right?
Yes. Other than for, you know, one-off examples like Joel shared earlier, or us, you know, helping people find housing elsewhere, or them voluntarily finding housing elsewhere. But yeah, we're just doing our best to keep people, fix them up so that they're livable this winter.
And we're still working on them all the time. We have another trailer we're putting a new furnace in tomorrow. We have another one we're putting a floor in next week. Like, it's not like, you know, they're down there bunkered and we're holding off. Like, we literally have people down there every single day working on one of the trailers. So we're still working with them to keep any one that falls apart that we can fix, we fix. You know, we do everything we can to make a more livable, better situation. You know, every one of them had working air conditioners all summer long, and every one of them will have a working heater all winter long, or we'll move them somewhere where they do.
So council, do we want to see final numbers and timeline at our next council meeting for this 81 unit proposal with the financing that Alex has presented?
My concern, to repeat it, is that I'm not sure about the reliance on modular for the concerns I expressed previously. Like I'm on board for the density and the total numbers and the mix of incomes, just not sure about the reliance on modulars. And I acknowledge that the income mix may be desirable to shift it because of how it'll score with some of their funding sources. So I'm flexible on that as we go along too.
Mayor, real quick, can I just ask our financial director, Clint, how are you feeling about this?
You know, it's a tough question, especially during COVID to me. I mean, I understand both directions, and that I'm one of the staff members that has gone back and forth on this on which one is the best scenario. I wasn't here when all this started, but I think whatever direction you guys go, as long as Moab stays busy and the sales tax at least stays where it's at or it goes forward, it's viable. So.
And that's a part of it too, is we as a staff are all a little gun shy. I mean, we've just went through COVID here and we've had to cut budgets, and we showed you those numbers, and we've cut spending 30%. We've all cut back, our benefits have been cut back. Like, we're real hesitant to like jump into the deep pool because we're like, but then we have to tell ourselves like, this is a once in a lifetime event, a once every 100+ year event. Like, and only in 2020 would I dare sit here and say, what, like, what are the odds of this happening or something? And you watch, tomorrow it'll be something else because it's 2020 and that's how this has gone. But we keep having to like try and we find ourselves on the edge, and we have to walk back and say we need to be long range planning and not caught up in the current crisis that we're in long term, because it's not long term. It's going to come to an end at some point. And we don't want to make a short-sighted decision because we're currently in the crisis.
Okay, it's 9:15 and we've got to move on.
Can I tell you what would be helpful?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm happy to bring you a timeline and an updated pro forma. What I would like at the next meeting is to have direction on, I mean, right now, do you want to talk about awarding a bid at the next meeting, or do you want to abandon the IFB that we did? How should I prepare for the next conversation about this project? About moving forward beyond the pro forma and the timeline?
I almost feel like you need to put together the pro forma timeline, and we need to have a special meeting next week in between this council meeting and the next council meeting. That's actually what I would propose, so that instead of going back and forth with each individual council member trying to assess, how we want to move forward and answering those specific questions, we can all be in a Zoom room together and kind of finalize that in a special meeting next week.
Great.
So that then you can prepare documents for our regular meeting in 2 weeks. Our November meeting. Council, what do you think about that?
I love it. And I appreciate how much time you guys have spent on this.
Council.
My only concern, Mayor, was whether or not Caitlin could get the materials in time for that meeting, but if she's comfortable with it, then we're good.
It depends on the day, but we can make it work.
Wednesday evening next week. Let's look while we're all together.
I'm pretty sure that's fine.
Veterans Day.
Wait, are you talking about November 4th? I mean, our meeting is on the 10th, but our council meeting, but are you talking about next Wednesday?
Yes.
Sorry.
The day after Election Day. Show up with your election hangover.
That'll be fun. Yeah, that works for me.
Wednesday evening.
It will not work for me. There's a Division of Water Rights meeting from 4 to 6. So if you schedule around that, maybe.
What at 6 p.m.?
I've got to do it after 6 anyway.
Yeah. 6 p.m. Wednesday next week. Anybody not work? All right, Summer, can you help me notice that?
Yep.
And we're going to move on from the agenda item. Caitlin, thank you so much. Alex, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming in. I think you kind of brought a lot of confidence to that conversation, and I'm really grateful.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Clint, I don't know if you're sticking around for any additional items, but we are moving on. And we're now at 9:20, so I think we'll find brevity where we can. 9.2, request for City Council approval of or direction regarding changes to the proposed city administrative procedures regarding a change in use of city real property in non-emergency situations. Laurie, thank you so much for putting it together. I don't know if you really have it in you to do much of a presentation, but I will let you take it away.
I'll take it from the bell. How's that? All right, so this is a agenda item that we had on you, that was before you previously, and the council gave guidance to me to come back with some draft administrative procedures for the council to look at when the city has real property where there would be a change in use. And so I rewatched that meeting and gathered all the feedback and came back with these draft procedures. And what we're trying to do is come up with procedures that would apply in situations where our land use code does not apply. So our land use code is chapter 17 of the municipal code. That would cover planning, zoning, development, subdivisions. This would be a case where there's a change in use. And I'm just gonna show you, I had some conversations with several of the city staff folks to make sure that we're not doing any contemplated procedures that would interfere with, you know, essentially public works or the police department or the Parks and Recreation Department. And so I'm gonna share here. This is, I added a sentence where the procedures would not apply. And so in talking with Public Works, Parks, and the Police Department, this procedure would not apply when there's staging or storaging of equipment. And you can see the other types of things that would be exempted. This is because we don't want to create additional work for certain departments, and when they would have a situation where they would need to store something. You can see here in the second paragraph that I still would like some guidance on at what point in time these procedures would kick in. My recommendation is that the procedures would apply when the different use is anticipated to be greater than probably at least 6 months, 180 days, however you'd like to do that. We don't want to create a process where if there's a temporary use that we would need to follow these procedures. I think that was pretty clear from the last council meeting. So my recommendation would be something greater than 180 consecutive days there in paragraph 2. We want to make sure that these procedures would not apply in an emergency situation, whether or not declared by the Emergency Management Act. This is for the police department, for example, to set up a command center or something like that. The only other situation I think we want to clarify is, I'm going to scroll down here. The procedures themselves would apply when the city is an owner of a piece of real property, and Joel suggested that we take out today the location within the city, as the city does own substantial property outside of city limits. And we think, well, maybe some of the issues that have come up have been located in the city. We want this to cover all city real property. So at this, the city council would have the discretion to decide at what point to conduct the public process, which, as you can see, I've given you lots of flexibility about determining the type of public process. Going off of the examples that the council provided at the last meeting, I wanted to give you the flexibility to have the type of public process that's needed for each situation that could come before you, and not have to stuff a square peg in a round hole every time there's something that comes up that we have to have a big, huge town hall. Maybe something comes to you, we're trying to anticipate what could come in the future. Maybe if it's something smaller, the council decides that public comment would be sufficient, or potentially something at the planning commission level. So I wanted to give you the flexibility later to decide at what point you want the public process before the decision is made and what it looks like, because we can't anticipate everything that might come down the pipe in the future. And of course, these are procedures that we would put in place and we would see how they go. And if they need tweaking or changing, as we find out later, there are things that we didn't anticipate, we can certainly do that. And the last thing is, Councilmember Dresser asked if we could post these administrative directives for transparency purposes in other places, and in addition to the city's internal webpage. And I think unless there's any objection, we would be able to do that. And with that, I would essentially see if there's any questions or anything else that I haven't covered that you'd like me to cover.
Let's go ahead and unsquare your share your screen. And let's do a quick measure. Is everybody okay with 180 days? Is everybody, Mike, is that yes? Okay. Is everybody okay with the taking out the located in the city limits, so that we can include other places like Old City Park and whatever? Okay. There was one other. What was the other?
Oh, it was some of the changes with regard to staging and storing. I think you could basically, if you wanted to vote on the document as I did in the screen share, with the addition of 180 days, that would be, you could make that motion.
Laura, you did such a great job. I'm very grateful. I would entertain a motion, or does anyone have questions before? Ronnie?
I just got some questions from a resident about how this would work. So I just thought I'd kind of read them in case any of my colleagues think that we need to write this into procedures. Because I don't know what everybody had in mind tonight. One of them was like, oh, okay, so if we're going to have these procedures, who can apply for them? Are we thinking that, any individual in the community could come in and ask, to use property, or a group of individuals, or do they need to be a nonprofit? So just some questions like that, like how does the public know if they can come in and ask? And then who do they go to? Is there like a contact person at the city? And then how would the process work from there? I take it whoever they talk to initially at the city would talk to them about what they're interested in doing, and either explain, right off the bat, oh, that's not possible because of X, Y, and Z, or, oh, okay, yes, and I don't know if they have to fill out paperwork or what. And then I don't know, like, does it initially, get announced or mentioned at a council meeting, and then from there, the council decides what form of public participation they want to do, whether it's a town hall or X, Y, Z. And then after that, we vote on it. I don't know. It just seemed like people found it would be helpful if we just establish that. And then would the person asking for the use, or would the city, be asked then to talk to the neighbors? Because this person was saying, oh, it could be a great advantage if, somebody talks to neighbors in the beginning, because then you can avoid a lot of, or just have a lot of conversations, or, just have more buy-in or whatever early on. And then just a side question, and I think this is just city policy, but if we're going to let someone use city property, and it's not a lease situation or something, I assume there's some kind of contract or something, because they said, what about liability? Like, what if a fire starts? Is the city liable? Is the user liable? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure there's some kind of agreement at that point that covers all of those things. But I just thought I would put those questions out there in case people wanted some kind of procedures like this to cover that stuff too.
Laurie, do you want to take a stab at those questions?
I think the intent of this is to not change any of the current process about how a person in the community or a nonprofit or any business would approach the city for a use of city property. And so I don't think that if you like, we could figure out if there needs to be an application process, but I don't think the intent of these procedures was to change that.
The answer to your question is basically it depends. They need to come in and talk to Carly and I. That's where it needs to start. But what they're asking to do is going to then dictate what the process is that follows. If they're wanting to run it as a business, that's going to be a lease agreement, and everything you just ran through is going to be covered in that lease agreement as far as liabilities and everything else. If it's a non-for-profit, that's what would kick something like this into effect, and we would go from there. But we don't tend to lease property to business for business reasons, unless it's property we own that's a shop or something, and that's the only thing we can really use it for. But we don't tend to allow city property to be used for private industry.
And these procedures wouldn't be triggered if there was a lease.
Exactly. A contract would cover all of that stuff, liability, all of that.
Okay, I think part of the reason the question arose was like, oh, well, The community gardens thing is kind of intriguing. Like if me and some of my neighbors, wanted to request that, we could do some gardening back there, could we come and ask for that? Or does it have to be a group? So I didn't know where in all of this we discussed that, or if the council has to decide it meets a greater community need, or really anybody can apply. So it was kind of, to address that question too.
That's a good question. And so in a situation like that, where a group of community members just came together as a collective and asked us to use that, that is exactly what this would be used for. This would kick in. That ties into our sustainability goals to try and provide community gardening areas. So we bring that to you for that reason as well. So in that scenario where no one's making a profit, they're not running a business, it's meeting sustainability goals that are outlined in our tentatively adopted sustainability plan, that is something that we absolutely would kick this into effect for and bring to you.
So I would entertain a motion.
Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve the city administrative procedures regarding a change in use of city real property in non-emergency situations with the addition of the 180-day threshold presented this evening.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tawny. Further discussion?
I'd just like to thank Lori and any other staff that worked on this. I appreciate the flexibility. I think these situations can be very unique to the particular projects, but we need to do better as far as engaging. And so hopefully we'll take this to heart in implementing it to the best of our ability.
Agreed. Any other comments, Mike?
Yeah, my what? As I've told you guys before, I think this is basically a political question and not an administrative one. And for that reason, I don't feel compelled necessarily to put this into the code, as long as the council has good sense to ask for hearing whenever the situation deems for it. Hopefully that's a lesson we learned out of the bike skills park. Having said all that, I'm happy to vote for the motion. I don't think it'll do any harm, but I would encourage us all to keep our political sensibilities and antenna tuned to when hearings are necessary.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Roll call. Kaylin.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Tawny.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. 9-3, moving on. Source control for, light topic, source control for solid waste district. Discussion on future resolution. We just got a lot of light topics here in front of us. Let's see, I believe we've got our city attorney again and presenting alongside Joel.
Joel, do you want to set this one up first?
Yeah, I can. So this is a proposed resolution we've been working on with the Special Service District, Solid Waste Special Service District. What's happening is that when the last contract was negotiated 2.5 years ago for our waste hauling agreement, the clause that had previously been in there that all solid waste be mandated to go to the local landfills, whether that be up Sand Flats or out on the highway, that was removed. And so there has been a request from the Special Service District that we put that requirement back into our agreement with our waste hauler, with Monument Waste, and that they then would be required to take that waste up to the landfills here locally. Obviously, we have an interest in making sure our local landfills have the waste and the byproduct, and we also have an interest that our hauler be able to be sustainable as well, because he's the only hauler that we have in the valley. So we're in this really weird situation where we're working to put this back in, and at the same time we're working to keep our hauler in a situation where it's viable and feasible for them to provide the service that we pay them to provide for us. And we're working on some other issues that are in that as well. And so that's basically what brought this on here. Just wanted to throw on here real quick for discussion, answer questions as we keep working through this process.
Okay, to council, questions, comments? Kaylin, I'm sure you have some thoughts to share with the council, as you are a special service district.
Well, I think Joel did a good job of summarizing the issue. I would just add that another concern is just keeping rates affordable for all the city ratepayers. But I mean, that's all part of the discussion, and so I don't really have anything to add, especially given the hour.
Okay, so since we're discussing a future resolution, Joel, what would you like to hear from the council tonight?
Well, I think that we've pretty much discussed this in one-on-ones with you guys as I've kind of caught you here at events, and when you come in and met with me, I've kind of ran by you what the issues are on a much deeper level than what we've talked about tonight. And so we put it on there to make sure that the special service district knows we're taking it serious, that we're moving it along, to give you guys an opportunity that if you had questions or comments or concerns, that we could address those. So as we brought the resolution back here on the next meeting, we could have it all worked out and pretty much be ready to go. If there's none, I'm happy to move forward and keep working and letting Lori and I and Evan work together to finalize it. I
appreciate all of your effort and collaborative spirit with this special service district. This is definitely, it's been a lot of talking trash. So I'm grateful for you to be talking so much trash.
It's a huge mess that's been not just the solid waste district having a flow control issue with the waste. It's a much larger issue that goes back a long time, and we're trying to resolve stuff that Evan and I have both inherited long before we ever got here. So if we can reach our goals and work this out, hopefully there's going to be a lot of resolutions to a lot of issues that have been here a long time.
Well, and thank you for educating this council about what flow control means. More information than we ever thought we would know about garbage collection. So appreciate that. Any other discussion that we need to have on this item, council members? Any comments? Okay, we'll move right along on to the next item on our agenda, which is new business 10.1, proposed resolution 42-2020, a resolution continuing the local emergency proclamation due to the economic impact of COVID-19 novel coronavirus on restaurants in the city of Moab. Laurie. Oh, yes, Karen.
I'm just gonna propose a motion.
Oh, good. Okay, yes, sure. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 42-2020, a resolution continuing the local emergency proclamation due to the economic impact of COVID-19 novel coronavirus on restaurants in the city of Moab.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Discussion?
This is a great motion, and I think we should pass it as soon as possible.
Okay, well then I will roll call vote. Thank you all so much. Let's see. Ronnie.
Aye.
Tani.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Good work. 10-2. Proposed resolution 43-2020, a resolution authorizing the agreement between the city of Moab and Alex Moab Properties, LLC. Do I dare entertain a motion?
I will so move.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Yeah, let me read it if I may.
Oh,
I moved,
absolutely.
if you would like. I move to approve resolution 43-2020, authorizing the agreement between the city of Moab and Alex Moab Properties Limited Liability Corporation.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tani. Discussion.
I'd like to thank Lori for talking to all of us. It's a big help.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate the work that Lori's put into it. And when I talked with her, it feels to me like this is doing what we said we were going to do, fixing what we said we were going to fix, and living up to an agreement that we had made long ago. One of those things that other councils did that we have to finish up.
Any other comments?
I was just going to thank you, Lori, and thank Chuck too for the stuff he answered from the documents. And And just check, it sounded like eventually, since none of these options are being selected now, we'll hear back before the wall is worked on or any other elements of this get worked on, right? About suggested option. I mean, I take it, they look kind of expensive, so I feel like we'll probably hear about that, right?
Yeah, so we have this reconnaissance level study done. The next step would be to go to if council approves this, ultimately to go to permitting, because we'll need to get the permits because it's down in the creek. And as part of that, we'll do a more detailed alternatives analysis. And we definitely will come back to council to keep you informed about what those alternatives could be.
And I'd just like to thank Chuck for the 1,001 phone calls from taking those for me today to educate me about stream bank stabilization. And also Chuck, thank you for sticking around to the end of the meeting. And I do know that Alex Moab Properties, they were very good to work with, and they are watching the meeting now. So thank you for staying up till 9:40 p.m.
Well, I mean, he's just zooming in from the river.
It's still daylight there apparently, so we still have lots of time to talk.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Okay, any further deliberation? Okay, I will call for the vote. Mike.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Connie.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And now we're at approval of the bills against the city of Moab. Tawny, is there a motion?
There is a motion. I move to approve the bills in the amount of $298,766.90.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Anything to share, Tawny?
No, because they're not in front of me. They're over in the other room.
Okay, easy enough. I will roll call vote. Call for the vote. Mike.
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Tawny.
Aye.
Kaylin.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Fabulous meeting, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all.